Hello learners. Today we're going to discuss on SDGs targets and indicators. In this session, we'll discuss from goal number 1 to 8. In immediate previous session, we have a quick look into the basic concept of indicators. And in differentiation, we have an understanding about sustainable development goals, indigenous achievements, and so on. As we know, sustainable development goals, it has 17 goals and 169 targets with 247 indicators. So when we are trying to achieve the 17 SDGs by 2030, there should be a mechanism to follow the progress of achievement made from time to time. That's why Global Indicator Framework was adopted by the General Assembly. This Global Indicator Framework for Sustainable Development Goals, it was developed by the Interagency Expert Group on SDG Indicators and agreed upon at the 48th session of the United Nations Statistical Commission held in March 2017 and adopted on 16 July 2017. And this indicator framework will be refined annually because, sustainable development goals, they are very dynamic depending on the progress or achievement so far. We need to refine those indicators from time to time. It was also reviewed in its 54th session in March 2020 and its 56th session to be held in 2025 also. This global indicator framework will be complemented by the indicators at the regional and national levels, which will be developed by member states. The official indicator, as per the changes from the 2020 comprehensive review and annual refinement from the 51st session in March 2020, have 231 unique indicators, with 12 indicators repeat under 2 or 3 different targets. And so, the total number of indicators listed in all the global indicator framework of SDG indicator is 247. Let us look into what are the targets and indicators goal by goal. Goal number 1, end poverty in all its forms everywhere. It has 7 targets and 13 indicators. Of the 7 targets, I will not share all 7 targets here, but let us look into few of the major targets and major indicators which we need to understand. By 2030, eradicate extreme poverty for all people everywhere, currently measured as people living on less than $1.25 a day. By 2030, reduce at least by half proportion of men, women, and children of ages living in the poverty in all its dimensions according to national definitions. And another target, implement nationally appropriate social protection system and measures for all, including flaws. And by 2030, achieve substantial coverage of the poor and vulnerable. By 2030, we need to build the resilience of the poor and those in vulnerable situations like climate-related extreme events, to create sound policy framework at the national, regional, and international levels based on pro-poor and gender-sensitive development strategies to support accelerated investment in poverty eradication actions. To achieve all these targets under this goal of the 13 indicators which was identified by the this UN indicator framework, few of them are proportion of the population living below the international poverty line, the national poverty line, by sex, age, employment status, and geographic location. It may be urban or rural. The another indicator, proportion of population covered by social protection, floor of social protection systems. Number of deaths, missing person, directly affected person attributed to disaster per 100,000 population, direct economic loss attributed to disaster in relation to global gross domestic product, proportion of local governments that adopt and implement local disaster risk reduction strategies in line with national disaster risk reduction strategies. Then proportion of total government spending on essential services, education, health and social protection, and a pro-poor public social spending. These are some of the few goals and indicators to achieve goal number 1. Let us look into goal number 2, end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. When there is a need to end hunger, we need to achieve food security, and we need to improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. To achieve this goal, we need to identify or we need to target which is related to these goals. So under this goal number 2, global indicator framework identify 8 main targets with 14 indicators to achieve this goal. Of the 8 targets, few of the important key targets are by 2030 to end hunger and ensure access by all people, in particular the poor and people in vulnerable situations, including infants, to save nutritious and sufficient food all year round, and all forms of malnutrition, including achieving by 2025 the internationally agreed targets on stunting and wasting in children under 5 years of age, and address the nutritional needs of the adolescent girls, pregnant and lactating women and older persons. One of the important targets is double the agricultural productivity and incomes of small-scale food producers, in particular women, indigenous peoples, family farmers, pastoralists, and fishers, including through secure and equal access to land, other productive resources and inputs, knowledge, financial services, markets and opportunities for value addition and non-farm employment. By 2030, to ensure sustainable food production system and implement resilient agricultural practices, to maintain the genetic diversity of seeds, cultivated plants, and farm and domesticated animals and their related wild species. By 2030, to increase investment, including through enhanced international cooperation in rail infrastructure, agricultural research, and extension services, technology development. Adopt measures to ensure the proper functioning of food, commodities markets and their derivatives, and facilitate timely access to market information, including on food reserves, in order to help limit extreme food price volatility. So to achieve those targets, the identified indicators are prevalence of undernourishment, prevalence of moderate or severe food insecurity in the population based on the food insecurity experience scale, prevalence of stunting among children under 5 years of age, prevalence of malnutrition among children under 5 years of age, prevalence of anemia in women aged 15 to 49 years by pregnancy status, that is in percentage. More indicators of food price anomalies, agricultural export subsidies, the agricultural orientation index for government expenditure, proportion of local breeds classified as being at risk of extinction, average incomes of small-scale food producers by sex and indigenous status. So through these targets and by using indicators, we will be able to track the progress of those goals at different levels. Goal number 3, this is one of the important goals under SDGs. Ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages with 13 targets and 28 indicators. Few of the important targets, which is very important here, is by 2030 to reduce the global maternal mortality ratio to less than 70% per 100,000 live births, and preventable deaths of newborn children under 5 years of age. Reduce neonatal mortality to at least as low as 12 per 1,000 live births. To end the epidemic of AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and neglected tropical disease. By 2030, to reduce by 1/3 premature mortality from non-communicable disease through prevention, treatment, and promote mental health and well-being. By 2020, halve means by end of this year, halve the number of global deaths and injuries from road traffic accident. By 2030, ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health care services. By 2030, to achieve universal health coverage, support the research and development of vaccines and medicines for the communicable and non-communicable diseases, and substantially increase health financing in the recruitment, development, training and retention of the health workforce. So, to check the progress on all these targets, of the 28 indicators, few of the indicators are maternal mortality ratio, under 5 mortality rate, neonatal mortality rate, number of new HIV infection per 1,000 unaffected population by sex, age, and key population, incidence of tuberculosis per 100,000 population, rate of suicide mortality, alcohol per capita consumption, death rate due to road traffic injuries, coverage of essential health services, proportion of population with large household expenditure on health as a share of total household expenditure on income. When we talk about health, we need to understand its capacity building. So, health worker density distribution pattern, international health regulation capacity, health emergency preparedness. These are some of the key indicators. Ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. It's goal number 4. It has 10 targets with 12 indicators. Of the 10 targets, few of the targets, key targets, which is very important, which I want to share here, is by 2030, ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education, leading to relevant and effective learning outcomes. By 2030, give access to quality in early childhood development, care and pre-primary education so that they are ready for primary education. Again, by 2030, ensure equal access for all women and men to affordable and quality technical, vocational and tertiary education, including university. Substantially increase the number of youths and adults who have relevant skills, including technical and vocational skills for employment, decision jobs, and entrepreneurship. One of the another targets is to eliminate gender disparities in education and ensure equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for the vulnerable, including persons with disabilities, indigenous peoples, and children in vulnerable situation by 2030. By 2030, ensure that all youth and a substantial proportion of adults, both men and women, achieve literacy and numeration. All learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development by 2030, to build and upgrade education facilities that are child, disability, and gender sensitive and provide safe, non-violent, inclusive and effective learning environments for all by 2030. Substantially expand globally the number of scholarships available to developing countries, in particular least developed countries. By 2030, substantially increase the supply of qualified teachers across the globe. The major indicators to check the progress of those targets under goal number 4 are proportion of children and young people in grade 2 or 3rd, at end of primary, at end of lower secondary, achieving at least a minimum proficiency level in reading and mathematics by sex. Completion rate at primary education, lower secondary education, upper secondary education. Proportion of children under 5 years of age who are developmentally on track in health, learning, and psychosocial well-being by different sex. Proportion of youth and adults with information communication technology skills by type of different skills. One of the few indicators is parity index. Proportion of school offering basic services by type of services, extent to which global citizenship education and education for sustainable development, which are mainstream in national education policy, curricula, teacher education, and student assessment. Proportion of teachers qualified in basic education by education at different level is also one of the key indicators under these goals. Goal number 5, achieve gender equality, empower all women and girls. Under this goal 5, Global Indicator Framework identify 14 indicators to monitor the progress of 9 targets. Few of the selected targets are, among the 9, end all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere. Eliminate all forms of violence against all women and girls in public and private spheres, including trafficking and sexual and other types of exploitation. Eliminate all harmful practices such as early and forced marriage and female genital mutilation, which is very common in underdeveloped countries. Recognize and value unpaid care and domestic work. Ensure women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision making in political, economic, and public life. To ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights is also one of the important targets under this goal. Undertake reforms to give women equal rights to economic resources as well as access to ownership, which is very important, and control over land and other forms of property, financial services, inheritance, and natural resources in accordance with national laws. To adopt and strengthen sound policies and enforceable legislation for the promotion of gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls at all levels. These are some of the key targets to achieve goal number 5. Of the 14 indicators under this goal, few of them are legal frameworks are in place to promote, enforce, and monitor equality and non-discrimination on the basis of different sex. Proportion of women and girls aged 15 years and older subjected to sexual violence by person other than an intimate partner. Proportion of time spent on unpaid domestic and care work by different sex, age, and location. Proportion of seats held by women in national parliament and local governments. The number of countries with laws and regulation that guarantee full and equal access to women and men aged 15 years and older to sexual and reproductive health care, information and education. Proportion of total agricultural population with ownership or secure rights over agricultural lands by different sex, and the share of women among owners or rights bearers of agricultural land by type of tenure. Proportion of individuals who own a mobile phone or mobile telephone by different sex. These are the few indicators that follow the progress of goal number 5. Goal number 6 is on ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. That 8 targets with 11 indicators. Let us see what are the key important targets and key important indicators. Of the 8 targets, some of the targets are by 2030, achieve universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all. Access to adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all and in open defecation, paying special attention to the needs of women and girls and those in vulnerable situations. By 2030, to improve water quality by reducing pollution, eliminating dumping and minimizing release of hazardous chemicals and materials. Substantially increase water use efficiency across all sectors. Reduce the number of people suffering from water scarcity. Implement integrated water resource management at all levels, from local to national to global levels, including through transboundary cooperation as appropriate. Protect and restore water-related ecosystem. As we know, there are mountains, forests, wetlands, rivers, aquifers, and lakes. The need is support and strengthen the participation of local communities in improving water and sanitation management. Few of the indicators to check the progress of 8 targets are proportion of population using safely managed drinking water services, safely managed sanitation services, and a hand washing facility with soap and water, domestic and industrial wastewater flows safely treated, proportion of bodies of water with good ambient water quality, proportion of change in water use efficiency over time, level of water storage, degree of integrated water resource management, change in the extent of water-related ecosystem over time. These are the indicators that is related to goal number 6. Ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, modern energy for all. It's goal number 7, with 5 key targets and 6 indicators to follow the progress of the 5 key targets. The targets are, by 2030, ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services, increase substantially the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix, increase the rate of improvement in energy efficiency, enhance international cooperation to facilitate access to clean energy, research and technology, including renewable energy, energy efficiency, and advance in cleaner fossil fuel technology, and promote investment in energy infrastructure and clean energy technology. Expand infrastructure and upgrade technology for supplying modern and sustainable energy services. The key indicators to check the progress of these targets are proportion of population with access to electricity, proportion of population with primary reliance on clean fuels and technology, renewable energy share in the total final energy consumption, proportion of population with energy intensity measured in terms of primary energy and GDP, install renewable energy generating capacity in developing countries, that's in watts per capita. Goal number 8, to promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. Having 12 targets, identify 16 indicators. Few of the key targets are sustained per capita economic growth in accordance with national circumstances, and in particular, at least 7% gross domestic product growth per annum in the least developed countries. To achieve higher levels of economic productivity through diversification, technological upgrading, and innovation, the another target is promote development-oriented policies that support productive activities, decisions of creation, entrepreneurship, creativity and innovation, and increase the formalization and growth of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, including through access to financial services. Improve progressively through 2030 global resource efficiency in consumption and production, and endeavor to decoupling, that's very important, endeavor to decouple economic growth from environmental degradation in accordance with the 10-year framework of Program on Sustainable Consumption and Production, with developed countries taking the lead. This is very important. The another target is by 2030, achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all. Substantially reduce the proportion of youth not in employment, education or training by 2030. Take immediate and effective measures to eradicate forced labor and modern slavery and human trafficking, and secure the prohibition and elimination of the worst form of child labor, including recruitment and use of child soldiers, and by 2025 end child labor in all its forms. To protect labor rights and promote safe and secure working environments for all workers. Devise and implement policies to promote sustainable tourism that creates jobs and promote local cultures and products. Another target is strengthen the capacity of domestic financial institutions to encourage and expand access to banking, insurance, and financial service for all. By 2020, develop and operationalize global strategy for youth employment and implement the Global Job Pact of the International Labour Organization. Indicators are annual growth rate of real GDP per capita per employed person, proportion of informal employment in total employment by sector and by different sectors, domestic material consumption per capita and domestic material consumption per GDP are some of the important indicators under these goals. Few more are average hourly earning of employees, unemployment rate at different level of nation compliance with labor right, tourism direct GDP as a proportion of the total GDP and in growth rate, number of commercial bank branches, ATMs per 100,000 adults. Proportion of adults means 15 years and older with an account at a bank or other financial institution or with a mobile money service provider. National strategy for youth employment, it is one of the key indicators. This session is based on these references. So in today's discussion, we have touched upon the key indicators and goals of SDG, goal number 1 to 8. Thank you, learners. Let us meet in another session where we are going to focus on, in continuation of this same topic, we are going to focus from the remaining, for the remaining goals. That is goal number 9 to goal number 17. Thanks all.